Hello and welcome. I'm Tom Burges Watson. You're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Arabiya News headquarters. These are the top stories. With just 4 days to go until Election Day, excitement is at an all-time high. More than 65 million voters have already cast their ballots, but the campaign isn't slowing down as Trump and Harris head to Milwaukee for a final push in Wisconsin. First, there was Beyoncé in Houston, then it was J-Lo in Vegas. Now, Kamala Harris is set to welcome Cardi B onto the stage at her rally in Milwaukee. Coming up, we discuss the impact of celebrity endorsements for the candidates. As the campaign continues to heat up, it's too close to call, but Trump has been making surprising gains with Arab and Muslim Americans, edging out his rival Kamala Harris 43% to 41%, according to one recent poll. And following one of the worst natural disasters in Spain's modern history, hundreds of soldiers are deployed to help with the rescue effort. The death toll from the severe flooding there has now risen to 205. Hello and welcome. In their final campaign sprint, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are working to win over voters in the Midwest, with both candidates set to visit Milwaukee on the campaign's final weekend. So far, Trump has concentrated on immigration and border control, while Vice President Kamala Harris has focused on women's and abortion rights. Meanwhile, black voters in the largest county of Milwaukee could make all the difference there, especially if Trump manages to gain in that demographic. Well, Harris has been appealing to Hispanic voters, particularly in Nevada, where she's been drawing in star power to gain support. Our correspondent there, Caroline Malone, filed this report.
You matter. Your voice and your vote matters.
Singer and actor Jennifer Lopez invoked her Puerto Rican heritage in front of a crowd of Harris supporters in Las Vegas on Thursday night. When the vice president spoke, she urged people to make their voices heard on healthcare, as people in Nevada also have the chance to vote on abortion rights on November 5th.
I have lived the promise of America, and today I see the promise of America in everyone here tonight.
Trump is recovering from offensive comments made about Puerto Rico by a comic at his event in New York. In key swing state Pennsylvania, which has a large Puerto Rican population, he used time on stage to promote what he sees as his accomplishments for the U.S. territory.
But I think no president's done more for Puerto Rico than I have. So thank you. That's really nice of you to say. Appreciate it. Thank you.
In Arizona, he made violent comments against former lawmaker Liz Cheney, suggesting she should face a firing squad. Cheney, a Republican who led the January 6th investigation, has been campaigning for Harris. Well, Cheney hit back on Friday, saying his comments show yet again why Trump should not be in the White House. The former president, alongside conservative media personality Tucker Carlson, also strongly criticized Democrats with unproven claims.
They could hate our country. They may hate our country. They may not even know it. You know, a lot of people don't know it, but and the other thing is they want to cheat on elections by signing these people up. And they are trying to sign people up.
But some of the most distinguished election academics are predicting a win for Harris based on their performance in the White House.
This is an election with probably the greatest gender divide we've ever seen. And in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, early votes are very heavily tilted towards women. And if that continues, that's very positive for Harris.
Well, some people may not think the polls will be decisive, but they are most certainly still as close as ever, including in the critical swing states. And with 4 more days to go, there are 4 more chances to get the support of every last voter in swing states. For Trump, that means campaigns in Michigan, Wisconsin and North Carolina. Harris will be travelling to many of the same places before a final push in Pennsylvania on Monday. Caroline Malone, Arabiya News, Washington.
Well, let's get more on the latest on the presidential race, and we can cross to Washington and speak to our chief correspondent, Simon Mark. Simon, great to have you with us. I mean, it's a real knife-edge race, isn't it? Lots of predictions are being made, and some people are now saying it all comes down to a battle of the sexes. What's the thinking there?
Yes, absolutely, Tom. I mean, we know that there is an enormous gender gap in this election, that women in greater numbers hew to Kamala Harris than men, and that men in greater numbers hew to Donald Trump than women. And Democrats are beginning to exude confidence about the outcome of this race based on that early voting data. Because it shows that more women have participated in early voting among the 65 million who have already cast their ballots all over this country than men. And Democrats extrapolate from that a sense that it illustrates the urgency with which women are choosing to get out there and support their candidate, Kamala Harris. Indeed, the Democrats have put out a new TV ad voiced by the actress Julia Roberts that is actively encouraging the wives of Republican husbands to go into the voting booth and vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, safe in the knowledge that, as the ad puts it, what happens in the voting booth stays in the voting booth. And if you look at that early voting data, there is beginning to be reason to believe that things may be looking brighter for Kamala Harris at the end of this week than they were at the end of last week. And also, given everything that has happened over the last 7 days, the difficulties that have assailed the Trump campaign, own goals, including, of course, that racist joke by a comedian at Madison Square Garden last Sunday about Puerto Rico, activating Jennifer Lopez to come out and say she's backing Kamala Harris and urging Latino voters to get out. Also, those comments over the last few hours by Donald Trump calling for Liz Cheney to be put in front of a firing squad. I mean, in a sense, the only firing squad that is being created by the Republicans at the moment is a circular one.
Yeah, it's an election with so many firsts, so unprecedented on so many levels. But like most elections, most of the 50 US states vote for the same parties. And it all comes down to those 7 swing states, 4 in the Sun Belt, 3 in the Rust Belt. One of those Rust Belt states is Wisconsin, and that's where the candidates are today. What are they doing?
Well, they are barnstorming Wisconsin. I mean, Kamala Harris particularly, she's got 4 separate rallies today in Wisconsin before she descends on Milwaukee at the end of the day. And she will find there waiting for her Donald Trump, because that's where he is ending his day as well. There should be some interesting imagery at the airport because there's a very strong chance you'll see Air Force Two, the plane carrying the vice president, parked not that far away from what Donald Trump refers to as Trump Force One. Donald Trump also has an earlier rally in Wisconsin. So that gives you a sense that this is going to be one of the 3 states that Democrats believe is going to be absolutely vital. The keys to Kamala Harris's victory if she wins, the other 2 being Michigan and Pennsylvania. That's why she spent so much time in those 2 states. Donald Trump believes that his strength is going to come from the Sun Belt, places like Arizona, where immigration is higher on the list of priorities for voters than some of the issues that drive people to the polls in the northern battleground states. But it is all about the battlegrounds as we go into this final weekend of the campaign and gear up for Monday night's big closing speeches before the election wraps up on Election Day itself, Tuesday.
Simon, they always say American elections are all about the economy. So let's talk about that for a minute. The Economist magazine says it's going to be endorsing Kamala Harris going into this election. We've also just received a jobs report, which came out today, a long-awaited report. Unemployment pretty steady at about 4.1%, but that report didn't make for particularly upbeat reading, did it? What did it say?
Not at all, and the White House is trying to put a gloss on it, but with only 12,000 new jobs created. That is a blow to the Biden administration, and it's a blow to Kamala Harris as well on the campaign trail. That falls way short of what economists were projecting. Some were projecting as many as 90,000 new jobs being created. Now, President Biden says that the unemployment rate is still holding steady, as you said, at 4.1%. He says that the United States has had the lowest average unemployment rate of any administration in 50 years under his watch. And there's no question that hurricanes may have been involved in slowing job creation as they hit particularly the southern states of the country. Donald Trump is having nothing of it. He, in a statement put out by his campaign spokeswoman, he says this jobs report is a catastrophe and definitively reveals how badly Kamala Harris broke our economy. Kamala's failed economic agenda wiped out nearly 30,000 private sector jobs, he says, and nearly 50,000 manufacturing jobs. Working families are being ripped off by the Biden-Harris economic agenda. And you can be sure that he will be pushing that point when he addresses those rallies in Wisconsin later today, because he's just within the last week actually started opening his speeches by asking Americans, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? That old Ronald Reagan question that propelled him to the White House in the 1976 election and the 1980 election, rather. And Republicans are daring to believe that the economy can still be their secret weapon as we head to the closing stages of this election.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to speed. Our chief correspondent, Simon Marks in Washington. Thank you. With 4 million Arab Americans in the United States, their votes could be decisive. While many feel conflicted going into this election, they fear Trump's harsh policies, such as his Muslim ban, but they're also concerned that Harris will continue to overlook foreign policy affecting Arabs, particularly in Lebanon and Gaza. Well, in Michigan, a key battleground state with a large Arab population, which has been outraged by Israel's war in Gaza, there is a growing sense of punishing the Democratic Party, which now seems to be losing the support of this section of the electorate. Well, a poll conducted by the Council on American Islamic Relations shows 18% of Muslim voters in Michigan support Donald Trump, as opposed to 12% who lean toward Kamala Harris. But the majority look like they're going to vote for the Green Party's Jill Stein, who has more than 40% support, according to that poll. Well, in the last presidential election in 2020, 70% of Arab Americans gave their backing to the Democratic Party. But as we've been saying, it doesn't look like they're going to do the same this time around, as events in the Middle East seem to have shifted their voting intention. Well, we've seen how Arab Americans feel about Harris and Trump there in the United States. So let's take a listen now to how Arab citizens in the Middle East feel about them both.
I prefer Trump because he focuses on the economy.
So far, I chose Trump. He stands with Gaza and wants to end the war there.
We Arabs prefer Harris because she's pro-immigration and wants the US to be as diverse as possible.
Trump? I like Trump because he's honest and doesn't care about anyone's opinion.
They're both worse than the other. Neither has a plan for the Arab states. Whether it's Trump or Harris, their foreign policies are the same.
In either case, Arabs won't benefit. What concerns us most is who can actually stop the war in Gaza.
OK, voices there from the Middle East. Well, Arab Americans are in a tough position, as we've been saying, unsure of whom to vote for. Trump, the architect of the Muslim ban, or Harris, a steadfast supporter of the war in Gaza? Well, joining us to tell us more is Dean Obeidallah, who is host of SiriusXM's radio show, The Dean Obeidallah Show, who's also a lawyer, comedian and journalist. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. For the first time in 27 years, the Arab American Political Action Committee hasn't opted to endorse a nominee. What do you think this says about the general mood amongst this crucial segment of the population?
It's very divided. I've never seen more of an emotional divide in our community leading into a presidential election like I've seen now in this one. And obviously, it's about the issues in Gaza and the Biden administration, and some people hold Harris responsible for it, but the Biden administration's support of Israel not putting any limitations on weapons in a meaningful way, despite what we've seen played out. So there are many people in the Arab American community that want to punish Harris. There are still, in other polls, showing it's about even, 40% for Harris, 40% for Jill Stein, third party, she has no real chance, and about 20% for Donald Trump. So the difference is in 2020, Biden got about 65%, 70% of the Arab American vote. So she hasn't lost all of it, but she probably has lost about 20 to 25%. And that's what we see going in. And it could make the difference in states like Michigan, Pennsylvania. There's even a robust population in Arizona and Georgia.
Yeah, you mentioned Michigan there. It's got the largest Arab American population of anywhere in the United States. Let's look then at Detroit, a town like Dearborn, where 55% of the population there, there's about 110,000 people who live there in Dearborn. They identify as Arab Americans. Many of them say they're going to vote for the Green Party. And I just wonder how representative you think that is of the situation more broadly across the United States.
Look, based on the polling that I've seen recently and the one you cited, but I saw other ones in the last couple of weeks from Arab American Institute, another CARE poll, it looks around 40% of the Arab community is supporting Harris, 40% supporting Jill Stein, a little bit more. Still, Donald Trump's support is lower than it actually was in 2020. The exit polls were a little questionable because we had COVID, but their different polls showed that about 35% of Muslim Americans, which is more broad than Arab Americans, supported Trump. So people shouldn't be surprised that within the Arab American community, there's diversity. And the good thing, Tom, is that our community's gotten more and more active politically. As a result, you're going to have conservative, moderate, and very progressive Arab Americans. So I'm not as troubled by that. I really hope that for the Arab Americans that can try to make a difference on changing policy in the Middle East, voting against Harris and voting for Stein, I hope that has an impact. But at the end of the day, if Harris wins, we have to unite to pressure Vice President Harris on issue as president to deal with the Middle East, make the policy more consistent with American values, at least the American values that we grew up with and we're told about compassion and empathy and consistent with international humanitarian law. So we're going to see, but it's a divided community. There's no doubt, but I wouldn't be surprised by that. As the community gets more, grows and grows, it gets more sophisticated politically, you have people having an attraction to both parties and a third party in the Green Party.
And just looking specifically at the war in Gaza, I mean, clearly a lot of anger at the Biden administration, by extension, anger directed at Kamala Harris. When it comes to Donald Trump, do you get the impression that Arab Americans think that Donald Trump has a realistic solution to halt that conflict?
No, and you know, when you talk about Arab Americans in America, it's about 60% are actually Christian. But putting it together with the Muslim and Arab American community, you know, I remind people in our community that Donald Trump made our life hell. In 2016, his campaign, one of the main points of it was demonizing Muslims, saying things like Islam hates us, lying and saying Muslims in New Jersey cheered the 9/11 terrorist attack, and then calling for a ban on us. And the result was we saw a huge spike in hate crimes directed against Muslim Americans in his first few years in office. As women with hijab being punched, a mosque being defaced with the word Trump, bullying in schools of Muslim and Arab American students. And his policy towards Palestinians were awful. He did whatever Netanyahu wanted, including cutting aid to the UN Relief Works Agency, the idea of cutting millions of dollars to hospitals in East Jerusalem that help Palestinians and the like. And he has said this delusion that somehow he's supportive of Palestinians and in Gaza is an outright lie. This is a man who has said he wants Netanyahu to finish the job. The only thing he doesn't like are the optics of it. So look, there are some people in our community that pragmatic approach is not working because they are in such pain, and I understand it. My family is Palestinian. They're in the West Bank. It's a very emotional time, but pragmatically speaking, you can put the emotion aside. Donald Trump is the worst thing for the Arab and Muslim community in this nation going forward and for the Palestinians.
Okay, well, we appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. American lawyer, comedian and journalist Dean Obeidallah. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Tom.
At least 55 people have been killed in Israeli attacks across Gaza during the last 24 hours. That is according to the enclave's health ministry. Well, in Nuseirat, 14 people died in an Israeli strike near a school sheltering displaced Palestinians, as reported by medics at the Al-Auda hospital in the camp. Additionally, another 10 people were killed in a car in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. That's according to medical sources. A new series of Israeli raids on Baalbek and Tyre has intensified the conflict in Lebanon. Meanwhile, rocket barrages from Lebanon into northern Israel have killed 4 foreign workers and 3 Israelis, according to Israeli medical sources. This escalation comes as US officials work to negotiate ceasefires. Lebanon's prime minister is accusing Israel of rejecting a ceasefire after the Israeli military bombed South Beirut for the first time this week. At least 10 strikes hit the southern suburbs before dawn after the Israeli military issued evacuation warnings. So turning our eye back to the US elections more specifically, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are ramping up their campaigns, and as they do so, they're bringing in some star power. Well, tonight, the American rapper Cardi B is going to join the vice president at a rally in Milwaukee. Well, only last week, Harris shared the stage with big-name celebrities like Beyonce, and in Houston and in Las Vegas, there was Jennifer Lopez on the stage. Let's take a look.
Imagine our daughters growing up seeing what's possible with no ceilings, no limitations. Imagine our grandmothers. Imagine what they feel right now. Those who have lived to see this historic day.
Should be upset. We should be scared and outraged. We should. And we must exercise our right to vote on November 5th.
I'ma keep running 'cause the winner don't quit on themselves.
Okay, as we saw there, Kamala has got the support of J-Lo, Beyonce and Cardi B. So, who's backing Donald Trump? Let's take a look. Okay, so support there for both candidates coming from celebrities. Although it has to be said, most of them seem to be throwing their support behind the Democratic Party. Although Trump does have, as we saw, his supporters as well. But will they make a difference? Well, to tell us more, we can cross to Mark Harvey, who is an expert on celebrity power and global media. He's joining us from the University of St. Mary in Kentucky. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. What's your opinion? Do celebrity endorsements make a difference?
First of all, I'll say I'm in Kansas, not Kentucky. But besides that, yeah, actually, it's hard to prove that they make very much of a difference in the end. If you ask most voters what they're really interested in, right, what's going to animate them, it's usually normal things like the economy, gas prices, food prices, what their party affiliation is. It's not usually, what does Jennifer Lopez think, right? Now, we do have evidence that at least in one case, Oprah Winfrey did make a difference when endorsing Barack Obama into the 2008 election, but it's very difficult to otherwise, in most cases, sort of absolutely prove that they're going to make that much of a difference.
Nothing new, are they, celebrities? They go back several decades, but have you seen them take on a growing role on the campaign trail?
Yes, definitely. I mean, really, one of the big turning points was the saturation of cable news in the 1990s, and then, of course, the growth of the internet and social media. And as news organizations are looking to fill time and trying to attract, clicks, just basically associating celebrities with all sorts of news stories has become much more frequent.
Yeah, I mean, clearly social media has played a really important role. Do you think perhaps it's more important for steering one demographic versus the other? I'm particularly thinking about younger voters. Do you think they are more steered by the star power?
Well, the evidence is mixed on that. There are some studies that indicate that some young voters are more swayed by celebrity endorsers. Other studies indicate they are not. Based on my research in my book, I could find no significant demographic angle on that people seem to be rather equally moved by celebrities or not moved by celebrities, and irrespective of whatever their backgrounds are.
And if it was just a battle of celebrity endorsements in the 2024 presidential election, who'd come out on top?
Well, I would probably say Kamala Harris just because of sheer numbers. And of course, many of the celebrities that are endorsing Kamala Harris are probably more on the side of what I would call credible, right? There are different measures we can use for credibility of celebrities. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the ones that Donald Trump is deploying are bad, at least not for his base. You know, there's sort of a rejection of Hollywood-style celebrities by Republican campaigns going back many years. And so it seems a bit ironic that Trump will, of course, criticize Hollywood, but at the same time bring on celebrities. But keep in mind, some of the people he's bringing on aren't really typical Hollywood types, right? You've got Hulk Hogan, you've got Kid Rock. And I think they play very well with Trump's base.
He had another supporter, Nicky Jam, but Nicky Jam has withdrawn his support. We talk a lot about celebrities giving their endorsements. What about when they withdraw it, like Nicky Jam has done? Does that have some damaging consequences for the candidate, do you think?
I'm not sure that the withdrawal of that endorsement is necessarily damaging to Trump's campaign itself. I do think it's telling of what may be a larger trend of Puerto Ricans being really put off by some of the comments that happened at Madison Square Garden. Can I prove that Nicky Jam's going to make a difference in this? Not really, but I do think it's perhaps indicative of some different attitude changes.
All right, well, thank you very much for speaking to us. Mark Harvey, expert on celebrity power and global media at the University of St. Mary in Kansas. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Spain is stepping up its rescue efforts as the death toll from the country's catastrophic rain and flooding has now climbed to 205. While dozens of other people are still unaccounted for. Meanwhile, the authorities are urging people to stay indoors as Spain braces for more rain and flooding. Well, in Valencia, where the flooding seems to have had the biggest impact, roads and other critical infrastructure have been destroyed. Homes and agricultural land have been submerged and cars have been washed away. Well, people in the worst affected areas have expressed their shock and their despair.
There are a lot of dead people. What do you want me to say? No matter how much help we get, it's not enough. We need much more help. And no matter how much help comes, this is not going to be fixed in a month or two. We need a lot because the floods have done a lot of harm. And the harm is going to be fixed, but the people who have left won't come back.
My wife and I don't want to live here anymore. It's already a nightmare. As soon as a bit of rain comes down, we are already checking our phones, and you just can't. At the end, you lose everything. I'm sorry, it's just helpless. It's impotence. Then the governments, they don't do anything. Every 4 years or every 2 years, I'm starting over again. Because this is starting over again, and we don't know what to do. We are desperate, because no matter how much help is there, and no matter how much the town councils tell you, yes, that we'll do everything possible, in the end, nobody helps us.
Well, for more on this, so we can cross to Valencia and speak to a journalist who's seeing the destruction firsthand. Sophia Riego, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Just bring us up to date. What is the latest on the situation there in Valencia?
The latest, the most important data that we should offer is that there's now a record of 2,002 people dead. But this number is being revised hour by hour by the authorities, because once the rain is getting low, once the emergency services can get into the cities, into the towns, they are finding more and more dead bodies. And this is a terrible number, but every expectation is that it is going to be worse.
Yeah, Sophia, I think you mean 202, not 2,002, 200, 200.
202,
yeah.
Yeah,
I just wanted to clarify that with you. And there is a sense of frustration. We just heard some people there in Valencia speaking, clearly a sense of despair, but frustration that perhaps not adequate warning was given to people who live there. Is that something you're hearing?
Yeah, it is a common sensation now amongst the people, because we have here in this region an alert system that it should be working before the alert is happening and not after. And this is what happened here. There was already several towns into the flood, and then the alert arrived into the mobile phones of the people. There's a lot of people saying that they were literally like this with the water, and they were receiving the phone alert. Now, 3 days after the critical day, people is still complaining about that because they ensure that we could be talking. Sorry, the aid tractor getting in. People ensure that if this system would have worked fine, we could be talking about less and less dead people.
So clearly, a lot of emergency vehicles, I can see behind you, blue flashing lights, and we understand that the military is there as well. Just tell us a bit more about the search and rescue effort, because it's feared, isn't it, that hundreds of people could still be unaccounted for?
I think it is a difficult situation because there's a lot of cities, a lot of towns, and a lot of, it is the railway, it is the airport of Valencia, lots and lots of streets and even the highway. Now here, this is one of the towns I would say is in best conditions, and even that, this is a mess. This is a complete chaos and disaster because there was such a strength of the water than you can see, we cannot now because of the light, but there's a lot of streets literally blocked because of the piles and piles of cars that are just, as a Tetris piece. And this is blocking all the access to a lot of people to their home. There's a lot of people that 3 days after the catastrophe cannot get out of their homes because they are blocked. The entrance is blocked because of this car. And this is getting the situation even worse because there is really a difficult situation to provide the aid, the food, the water to these people that is stuck at home.
Okay, well, we really appreciate you speaking to us. Journalist Sophia Diego in Valencia, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Let's get a check of some other stories we're following for you now. A shooting in Orlando has left 2 people dead and 6 others injured. This happened when a gunman turned his weapon on costumed partygoers at Halloween celebrations in a downtown area. But a 17-year-old suspected assailant has been taken into police custody at the scene. Well, the 6 injured have been hospitalized and are reported to be in a stable condition. Now to another shooting, this time in the French city of Poitiers. Officials say that 5 people have been injured in what appeared to be a clash between rival drug gangs. Well, following on from this shootout, skirmishes erupted involving scores of people. The police used tear gas to restore order and extra police officers are being sent to the scene. At least 7 people, amongst them school students, have been killed in an explosion in southwestern Pakistan. 23 others are understood to have been injured. This happened in Mastung, which is the district of the province of Balochistan. So far, no group has claimed responsibility for that attack. Now to another explosion, this time in the Greek capital, which has left 1 man dead and a woman seriously injured. This happened in an apartment in the center of Athens. The 2 guns and ammunition were seized by the authorities at the site. Well, the fire department is investigating the cause of the blast, which may have been caused by an improvised bomb. A massive fire at a cooking oil factory in Jakarta has claimed the lives of at least 8 people. That blaze has now been contained, but there are fears that the number of casualties could rise. Well, the local authorities have launched an investigation into that blaze. And the US and Russia are very close to engaging in direct military conflict. That's according to Moscow's top diplomat, Sergei Lavrov, who issued the stark warning in an interview with the Turkish daily Hürriyet. Well, he did not elaborate further. Let's get a check of some business news stories we're following for you now. Construction at Peru's Chinese-built megaport in Lima is almost complete and set to be inaugurated later on this month by the Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Peruvian counterpart, Dina Boluarte. Well, it's hoped that a direct shipping route from China to Latin America could reduce shipping times by at least 10 days. While the $3.6 billion project has been largely funded by China. US job growth slowed drastically in October, hit temporarily by hurricanes and labor strikes. The Department of Labor said the economy has added just 12,000 jobs in the past month. That's far below expectations. Well, while growth has dropped, the unemployment rate has been largely unchanged. It stands at 4.1%, although this is the slowest rate of hiring since 2020 and the lowest pace since President Biden took office. Striking workers at Boeing are set to vote on a new offer from the aviation giant, which includes a 38% pay rise during the course of the next 4 years. Well, the union representing the more than 30,000 striking workers has endorsed the offer and says it'll hold a ballot amongst its members next week. ExxonMobil has reported a dip in third quarter profits. Net profits were $8.6 billion, down by just over 5%. Well, the US oil giant cited what it called structural cost savings as being the reason for those results. Saudi Arabia's National Council for Occupational Safety and Health issued a statement today denying recent reports about working conditions and the number of fatalities of laborers in the kingdom. Well, several reports circulating online allege that more than 21,000 workers had died while working in Saudi Arabia during the past 8 years. However, the council said that the work-related fatalities in the kingdom stand at 1.12 per 100,000 workers, which is amongst the lowest globally. They said the International Labour Organization has acknowledged the low number of fatalities. The Irish business mogul Colm McLaughlin, who helped build Dubai duty-free, has died. He set up his operation back in 1983 and ran it until he retired earlier on this year. Well, the company's new managing director, Ramesh Chidbami, has praised him for building a $2 billion business employing more than 6,000 staff. Colm McLaughlin was 81 years old. Got some sports stories we're following for you now. Manchester United have appointed Ruben Amorim as head coach. He replaces Erik ten Hag, who was sacked on Monday. Well, ten Hag's job was the subject of speculation for most of the last season as United recorded their worst Premier League, finishing in 8th position. Amorim will join United on a contract until 2027 with a club option for an additional year. His first game in charge of United will be an away game at struggling Ipswich on the 24th of November. Dwight Yorke has been appointed as the men's football coach of the Trinidad and Tobago men's team. Well, Yorke is a sports pundit for the Arabiya news channel. Well, in a media release, the TTFA described the signing as a new chapter for Trinidad and Tobago football. The former captain will focus on qualifying the team for the upcoming World Cup. Well, Yorke plays for international clubs such as Manchester United, Aston Villa and Birmingham City. The Sao Paulo Grand Prix is kicking off this weekend. The three-time champion Max Verstappen will be a focus of intense scrutiny when he seeks to defend his reputation and his lead. Well, the weekend begins with Haas driver Olli Bearman replacing Kevin Magnussen for the first day of the race after he reported feeling unwell. Let's give you a quick reminder of our top stories here on Al Arabiya News. With just 4 days to go until Election Day, excitement is at an all-time high. More than 65 million voters have already cast their ballots, but the campaign isn't slowing down as Trump and Harris head to Milwaukee for a final push in Wisconsin. First, there was Beyoncé in Houston, then it was J-Lo in Las Vegas. Now Kamala Harris is set to welcome Cardi B onto the stage at her rally in Milwaukee. As the campaign continues to heat up, it's too close to call, but Trump has been making surprising gains, with Arab and Muslim Americans edging his rival Kamala Harris out 43% to 41%, according to one recent poll. And following on from one of the worst natural disasters in Spain's modern history, hundreds of soldiers are deployed to help with the rescue effort. The death toll from the chronic flooding has now risen to 205. That's all we have time for. Coming up next is Riz Khan, and then at 1:30 p.m. We'll have a roundup of the top interviews of the week and a special edition of Global News Today. That's coming up ahead of you here on Arabiya News. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned.